Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. We welcome you to the first night of our Financial Independence Financial Seminar, and we're honored to have you to join us via live stream. We are thankful for our audience in virtual land, and we know that there were people, even from out of the state, that told me they would be logging on tonight to watch it, and so I wanted to make it available for them as well. Our first presenter has come a long way to be with us on tonight, and we thank God for those that are here with us in the fellowship hall. In fact, if you're listening and you're close, you still have time to get here. We want you to come and give this great man of God an opportunity to look into your faces as well. But he's going to present, and I would like to remind him that there's a great audience that is watching him and to present on tonight as well. And so keep that in mind, because the information that he shares with us is going to be so pertinent that I think that we're all going to be blessed for it. I met Mr. Thompson as he had come through our convention. He is one of the sponsors in the Florida General Baptist Convention, and when they give him spots and opportunity to speak to the entire convention, the way he handles himself, the way he shares, the information that he shares, it is always so informative. He has a table that is set up right outside of the convention hall, and so many people are coming in on tonight as well. And so I thought that we would be blessed by having him to come to Miami and to present to us. So he's going to tell us about himself and what he has to present, and we're going to let him talk, and then we are going to ask some questions. I'm going to ask Dr. Ivy, is there a way for people to call in, Daph, and give questions? Uh-huh. All right. So we'll write down the questions that come in through Facebook and through YouTube as well. Type it into your comments. We'll write them down and ask some questions as well. We're looking for a great time on tonight. Without any further ado, come on, put your hands together for Brother Mark Thompson. Bless you, brother. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Men, ladies, Second Baptist, I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you this evening. Again, I'm Mark Thompson. I'm originally from the Bahamas, so if you hear an accent, that's where it's coming from, okay? I moved to North Carolina in 1990, attended at Augusta University, and I attended there on a baseball scholarship, so baseball was my ticket. Finished in 94 with a degree in accounting. Upon graduation, I became licensed in North Carolina and multiple states to implement life, long-term care, and disability insurances. Simultaneously, I received my securities license, which allows me to implement 401ks, 403bs, annuities, mutual fund IRAs. Bottom line, anything regarding insurance and investments, I've got direct ties to. Just to share a little bit more about myself, got a little slide. So we try to, thank you there. Just expanding on myself and my experience, been in the financial business or industry for 28 years. Provide confidential income and assets preservation for a diverse range of clients. Primary focus is helping my clients protect, accumulate, and distribute wealth. Okay? With that said, wealth. Tonight's goal is to just discuss concepts and opportunities of how the average person could potentially accumulate $1 to $3 million anytime between the 15 to 20 years arising. And within that process, I'm going to focus on 4 areas or 4 goals. They are going to be income and legacy protection, wealth accumulation, how to understand and utilize leverage, and likewise, just as importantly, charitable gifting, endowment funding. Okay, let's get into this. Corinthians 16:2. On the first day of each week, each of you should set aside a sum of money, keeping with your income, saving it up so that when I come, no collection would have to be made. that concept to me or idea is that, okay, we're setting aside funds, but we're not setting aside. We're going to be real intentional about where we set it aside and what we allow those funds to do for us. Okay? With that, when we discuss wealth, we need funds. So accumulating wealth, you don't know what you don't know. And with that, I like to say, what is your hustle? And I ask that from the perspective of, it takes money to make money, the old cliche that said, right? And so if our 9 to 5 is not allowing us to get to where we want to get to, meaning just staying balanced, then we have to have a hustle, is what I call. So in short, I challenge you and encourage you to, first of all, in terms of investing, invest in yourself. Invest in yourself. Start some sort of cell phone operation, cell phone business. Invest in yourself. Why? Because in investing in oneself gives you the greatest opportunity to financial freedom. From an accumulation perspective, but also as well from a tax control positioning. You know, so any type of business you've got, incorporate that business. S Corp would be ideal. Why? Because there's so many tax savings you can get through an S Corp in terms of reducing your overall income. So, for example, I caught the Uber driver today at the airport. And I typically ask all of them, you know, how long you've been doing this, what do you make? And I'm very, very intentional about that. And my point is this. He's doing it part-time, so guess what? This part-time Uber driver, that's his hustle. Okay, and with that, I said, so how well do you do? He said on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, he averages about $400 a day. So on a 3-day weekend, he makes about $1,200. That's over almost $60,000 a year on the side. And so think about that for a second. Your 9 to 5 is not allowing you to, but if you encourage or entertain some sort of side gig, then you got that discretionary income. Why is that discretionary income so important? Because it allows you to what? Position yourself to accumulate wealth in terms of other opportunities. So once you, first of all, invest in yourself, the other opportunities are what? Stocks, ETFs, real estate, and life insurance. Now, when we get into stocks in itself, it's just direct ownership. A lot of us somewhat kind of aware of what that looks like. And in the process, you're just buying ownership, okay? ETF is obviously a cheap way of acquiring stocks at a lower risk. And so you're investing in this ETF seems plain in terms of you investing into ownership. But again, lower risk, less expenses, okay? I'm going somewhere with this. The third component is what I love is real estate. Because with real estate, this is where I call the magic happens. You know, you can acquire so much. You can do so much with so little in real estate. So many variables in real estate that one can capitalize on. And the fourth component that this is where I live at is life insurance. The average person looks at life insurance from the perspective of just protection. But from an investment perspective, life insurance is one of the most effective investment tools there are out there because it brings so much to the table. I'm going to get into each of these later on, but just tapping the surface here, okay? And with that, it's not how much you make, but how much you allow the government to take. And I say you allow the government to take. Why? Because if you work in a 9 to 5 and that's all you're doing, then you're caught up in the system the government has built. The system the government has built is convince you to work a 9 to 5, you make the money, your tax bracket is going to come in that sweet spot. That sweet spot meaning that what? You can do but so much, and then everything you do and how you do it, there's a tax principles on it, okay? Going back to if you work in a 9 to 5 and you start a self-employed business and you've got an S Corp, guess what you just did? You can start deducting a whole lot of stuff. You know, part of your rent or mortgage is now deductible. So if you just increase your deduction, which you just did, reduce how much you're going to owe the government. Driving to and from work, your car usage. all of that becomes a deduction that you weren't using before. You know, the money you're giving the kids each week, guess what? You can now deduct that as a business expense, because if you got to call Johnny or Susie to record you doing something, they become what? Your tech personnel. They're employed for the company. You can deduct that. You follow me? All of these now becomes what? Ways for you to reduce that taxable income, which and the net result allow you to have a greater discretionary income. And with that discretionary income, obviously, you can invest into opportunities that will allow you to slowly build and accumulate wealth. Make sense? So again, your taxable grid, traditional IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, what also could be up there are pension plans. That's where 90% of individual lives. That's where, again, the government has convinced you that, you know what? You got to work with so many years, build up this account, and then convince you got a certain age, then you should retire. Wealthy individuals don't ever retire. Self-employed individuals don't ever retire. Why? Because they built that. If you build something, you build something with passion, you build something with love. So you don't wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to retire from passion and love. You don't. You slow down. You with me? You slow down and hope that Susie or Johnny will join you at some point and they succeed you. So that retirement concept, again, it's not a wealth-building concept. But obviously, if you labor somewhere for 30-plus years, from an independent perspective, then your body is drained stressfully and physically that you've convinced yourself that you need to retire. Warren Buffett is one of the wealthiest men in the world. What is Warren doing? 8:30 every morning, Warren is up in his office. Why is that? And I can go down the list. They all are still working. Do they need to? No. But they understand the principle of what? Of wealth accumulation and to go down that path to get there what? To start what? Investing in him or herself. So hopefully at the end of the night, going into next week, you start thinking about the opportunities. You know, another example, the lady that cleans my house, she comes a couple of times a month, and she hits me for $260 per visit. And so you multiply that, you know, I'm not counting her money, but think about it. She's seeing 10 folks a week, $2,600. You with me? There's certain things that on the outskirts you look at and you be like, I won't do that, or I could do that. What does that represent to you in terms of a position yourself financially? Okay, because again, once you're able to have some discretionary income, then you can now go down the path of accumulating wealth and acquiring stocks, acquiring ETFs. And again, the acquisition of those things are more so positioning you for your next step. Again, stocks, ETFs, real estate, and likewise life insurance. Now check this out. Here's why stocks and ETFs kind of works for you from an investment perspective. You can access funds from those tax-free. I'll say that again. You can access funds from those tax-free. I'm telling you this, you call 90 advisors out there, probably 85% of them will tell you, no, you can't, because you got to redeem those funds to access it. You with me? But there's this thing called margin, which means you taking a loan against your money. Now, this is where wealth really spins. So follow me. If you're taking a loan against your money, those assets or funds are what? Still there. You with me? They're charging you a fee. It's a small fee. But in turn, you're using that money to do what? Invest more. So follow me here. So if you've built up some money, it doesn't need to be a big amount, but just enough that now you started out down the path of you got some ETF stocks accumulated. And from that, you call the broker and say, look, you want to establish a margin account. And in that margin account, just use numbers, just assume it's 20,000. You want a margin account against that. He or she may tell you, you know what? You can access 15,000. So you borrow your money, they'll charge you 4%, right? So you borrow the money, the funds are still there, you never redeemed it. You borrow that money and you invest it, you turn around and buy what? More stocks, more ETFs. You follow me? So now you're using your money to buy more. You borrow and buy, okay? And then you repeat that process over time. You buy and you borrow. Again, most teaching would tell you that what? Debt's a bad thing. Most teachers who were telling you that haven't really accumulated anything, so they don't understand the principle. When you accumulate in wealth, debt is a good thing. Debt is a very good thing. Debt reduces taxes. You don't have any debt, you got a high tax bracket. I don't care how much money you make, because you got no deductions. You with me? So you want to be able to buy and then borrow. That's the strategy here, buy and then borrow. So following that path, you buy some stocks, it accumulates, you borrow against those stocks, purchase more stocks or ETFs, and you go down that path and you repeat that process, and over time you'll accumulate significant amount there. Then you get into the real estate, okay? What are we speaking to as relates to the real estate here? It's the same principle. The average person that owns a house, what do they typically do? They focus on paying off that house. That's the mission. They bought a house, the person, nah. You pay down that house here again. You're reducing the debt exposure. If you reduce the debt exposure, you're increasing your tax basis. It's one or the others. You with me? But if you turn around, and we're talking about wealth accumulation here, okay, and borrow against that house from a refi basis and principal, and turn around and what? Purchase what? Another house. So if you repeat that process every 2 to 3 years, you're going to wake up in a 20-year time period and say, wow, you accumulated 10 to 15 houses. Just a simple principle of what? Buy and borrow. Buy and borrow. And each transaction, you know what's happening? How many taxes you paying in there? 0. Because nothing has been ever redeemed. Nothing's been sold. You buy and borrow. I know it's a different concept from traditional thinking, but wealthy folks don't think traditionally. This is why last time I checked, I think it's now 20% of the U.S. control 98% of the wealth in the U.S. So you think about that for a second. Why? Because they think and operate differently. If you fall in the masses, you're in trouble. You fall in the masses, you're in trouble, you know. But anyhow, that's not a conversation. That's not a conversation. Let's move on there. Okay? So you don't know what you don't know. Now check this out. If you invest $500 a month at 9.5% rate of return, you'll accumulate $1 million in 30 years. If you invest $1,400 per month at 9.5% annual rate of return, you'll accumulate $1 million in 20 years. If you invest $2,525 and an accountant can accumulate on average 9.5% annual rate of return, you'll accumulate $1 million. So the question now is, you identify to yourself, where would you like to be? Where do you fall in that grid? Whether it's 30 years for you, because you're younger, obviously. Whether it's 20 years for you, whether it's 15 years for you. That's your number. You with me? Once you identify your number, then you can go into game plan. Now, what makes this work? It's compound interest. When you're talking about investment and accumulation, compound interest, you know, it's the game changer, it's night wonder. And the simple process or concept is this: new money and old money generating more money. Okay? And the key element is time. The key element is time. So if you do the math on that, $500 per month times 12 is what? $6,000 a year. Times 10 is $60,000 a year. Times 3, that's $180,000 a year. So that individual, you invest $180,000, and you wake up one day just by default, and you got $1 million in an account. That's durable for most folks if they got what? the time. You with me? If you look at your age and say you're 50, and your goal is to be a millionaire, at 70, then you got a 20-year horizon. If you're older, then you've got a 15-year horizon. Again, it's all compound. It's time and money. It's all math. Make sense? It's all math. If you will, right there. Thank you. Proverbs, invest in the right accounts. There are treasures to be desired. I know all in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man spending it up. So again, looking at the investment opportunities, where do you invest? You want to identify the accounts that does what? Are going to accumulate, it's going to compound, and it's going to reduce your tax basis, period. Any investment that's going to reduce your tax basis, that's the lean and the clean I advise all my clients to explore. And utilizing those vehicles are going to allow you to get there. Next, please. Okay, so own. The first to leverage something, you must own it. So here's where we're going with this. We can't leverage what we don't own. So if we're renting, it's a bad play. It's a bad play. It's a bad play. We've got to explore home ownership, property ownership, whether it's commercial or primary. That's your key. That is massive. That is massive in multiple ways. First of all, you heard the saying, and it's the cliche, but it's so true. They're not building any more land. I used the math earlier. You're able to acquire a home today, and even if you acquire one every 5 years, which is very doable, because to acquire a home, there are 3 things we need, right? Show stable income, average credit, and a down payment. That's it. Stable income, average credit, and a down payment. Okay? So now check this out. The average monthly rent in Miami today is $2,182. That's the average monthly rent. At what house value can that purchase at a 5.5% interest rate today? So anyone who's renting a house in Miami, paying about $2,000, they can purchase a house worth $384,000. From an income perspective, now the credit could be jacked up, but if they get an average credit, they can walk down the path of what? Purchasing a $400,000 house. That's a game changer, but you don't know what you don't know. And until somebody tap you on the shoulder and kind of drive you down that path, you're going to continue to pay that lease or that rent. And then you find yourself on a struggle bus year after year, trying to figure out how you cannot get ahead. Once you get into the ownership, you got mortgage deduction, you got interest deduction, you got insurance deduction, you got depreciation. All those deduction does what? Reduces your tax basis. Again, it ain't how much you make, it's how much you allow the government to take, because you choose to operate in a lane that the government wants to stir you down. And if it stir you down that lane, then from a wealth accumulation perspective, it's going to be difficult. But if you get into home ownership, and you utilize the leverage, look at this example. House purchase at $300,000, 10 years ago, has a current value of $450,000, okay? That 30-year note at 4%, that monthly payment is $1,700. Guess what? That $1,700, that's fixed for the next 30 years. So which means what? As inflation increases, that $1,700 that may look big today, it's going to start to shrink just by default. You with me? Which means that now your house is outpacing the buying power of a dollar. You with me here? And over time, in this case, 10 years, the balance on that note is going to be $237,000. Hit the next slide there for me, please. So if you leverage this is where understanding leverage comes in. So if you leverage the value of that home, refi the house, 85% loan-to-value ratio, simple math, 85% of $450,000 is $385,000. Okay, $385,000, your net equity cash flow is going to be $385 minus what's owed, which is $237,000. It's a net $145,000. So just refinancing that house after 10 years can put $149,000 net in the average person's hands. Okay, so now what do they do with $145,000? Turn around and put $20,000, $25,000 in the bank, and then they got a net of $120,000 to invest. Remember, you only put down 3% of the next purchase house, of the house you initially purchased. Now you got $120,000. So, but you use the same math structure and you look bigger. So let's look at a $750,000 house, which 3% of that number is going to be less than $120,000. You with me? When I say in house now, I'm talking like a duplex, a triplex. You with me? You borrowing, you purchased, then you borrowed against it. You see the same strategies from the stocks. Now it's resurfacing in real estate. It's the same concept. This is how and what wealthy folks do, using other people's money. How much money they put in there? 3% on the first house. And because it's, if you go triplexes, it becomes 20%. But guess what? You could go close to Fort Lauderdale and buy a beach house and put down 3% because in a certain radius, you're allowed to have 2 primary houses. That's your vacation home. But you're buying a primary house, a vacation home, and utilizing as listed as a primary house with 3% down. So you just bought what? Your second house. And with Airbnb, you do the math on that. This is Miami, baby. The demand is extremely high up here for rental usage. You with me? We're talking about accumulating wealth here. We're talking about what? Using what you've got to get to where you're trying to go. And what's the strategy? You buy and then borrow. You buy, then you borrow. You rinse, wash, rinse, and repeat the process. Whether it's stocks, equities, and or real estate. Make sense? Okay, next please. Life insurance. I call life insurance the game changer. Why? Because we can do so much with this bad boy right here. We can do a whole lot with it. Okay? A good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. You know, I was watching a show a couple weeks ago, and Joe Kennedy made a statement. He was part of the character. Joe Kennedy was the father of the Kennedys, you know. He said it only takes one generation to shift the trajectory of that family. He was the generation of shift for the Kennedys, based on the opportunities and deals he cut at that time. Now, from last I checked, they said every Kennedy that's born in the U.S. is born a millionaire. You with me? So where am I going with this? With life insurance, we all have an insurable interest. We all do. We can either use it or lose it. Okay? If we use it, then we can position our family. We could be the generational shift for our family if we use it properly. If we don't use it, we take it to the grave with us. Next slide, please. So let's unpack that. So when we talk about life insurance, who should we, first of all, insure? We start with ourselves. You know, a good rule of thumb is 20 times your annual income. So if you make $100,000, that insurance company can insure you up to $2 million. Okay, and you just you run that math. Okay, no, we're not talking about 100,000, 200,000. No, no. We're talking about generational shift. We're talking about ensuring some significant change in terms of if and when that income earner is deceased. You with me? So we start with ensuring ourselves to make sure if by chance we don't get on the back end, our family are going to be financially secure. That's both the husband and the wife. I met with a bishop 2 days ago doing this review, assisting client. He's good, and he said, you know what? We don't need, the wife, if something happened to me, she's going to be okay because she's obviously a housewife. I'm going to be in a lot. I say, nah, Bishop, you're missing it. She has an insurable interest. We want to maximize that. She dies, there should be millions of dollars those kids and grandkids inherit. See, what happens is, the favor that some of us are receiving this generation, it's not guaranteed for those that come behind us. So we want to do as much as we can to ensure that they live just as good or better. The tool can do that from day one. It's the right life insurance vehicle. Make sense? Okay, who else can we insure? Parents and grandparents. What do you mean parents and grandparents? Again, each person has an insurable interest. So this generation, from a financial perspective, last I checked, is doing better than generation previously, right? And so you know what your discretionary flow is. So understanding that even though your parents may be old, there's an insurable interest. So it becomes an investment for you. Mom, Dad, do you mind if I took out a $500,000 policy on you? What do you mean? Meaning that I'm going to take an insurance policy on you. I'm going to be the owner. I'm going to pay her. When you die, that's going to be your last gift to me. Most parents, they don't care. You with me? As long as they ain't got to pay for it, sure. Right? But now you do the math on that. Whatever the premiums are, you're going to get a return on that investment because we all guaranteed to do what? Die. We don't know when, but we're going to die, right? And guess what? We only die once, so it ain't going to be no coming back and say, hey, let me get 300, 400, 500 more thousand. No. You got to get that thing right on the front end, okay? But that's just from the debt perspective. Who else should be insure? Business partners, our money, supplemental tax income. So business partners, we're talking about business partners. If you're in a business, you got a partner. That business is at risk because each partner has an equal value most of the time. So you want to ensure that partner risk assessed. Why not? Because if my wife to be actually getting married a week from now, but if she and I in business, or she and I not in business, I'm in business with one of my partners. If I die, what just happened? He becomes a business partner, but she don't understand my business. So it's going to destroy my business if we don't have the proper agreement at hand, and more importantly, the proper check so that he can buy out properly or vice versa. You with me? So that's why you would want to insure your business partner. It's called a buy-sell. You establish what the values is on each other, and the business takes a policy on each. Whomever died first promises to buy the shares, get first dib to buy the survivor shares out. Make sense? Okay. Money tax time boom. How do you insure money? Going back to that leverage play. The average person, if they work and they've been working for some time, it's very common, especially federal government, to have over $1 million in retirement account. That might sound like a lot of money, but guess what? If that a retirement account is, remember that taxable grid, IRAs, 401k, 403b's pension? Average tax bracket is 22%. The state of North Carolina is 7. 22 plus 7, that's 29%. That's going to be hit against that IRA or 401k the minute that person dies. So it's 29% of $1 million, $290,000. They just lost because they died. But if you can insure against that, and I'll get into that strategy in a second. But the beauty of what I love to life insurance uses for, in addition to the death benefit, is twofold. One, the supplemental tax-free income. Supplemental tax-free income. Why? Because today's life insurance is different from yesterday's life insurance. Today's life insurance comes as an investment tool. It's called Index Universal Life. And in Index Universal Life, you got the market accumulation on one hand, death benefit on the other. But the market accumulation, guess what? Your earnings are based on what the market does, but there's zero risk. Okay? I'll say that again. The earnings are based on what the market does, but there's zero risk. So if you can make market rate of return but no market loss, you get the best of both worlds. Correct? And then that grows tax deferred. And as it grows tax deferred, that's your money access as a need to. But now here's the real trigger behind that. When you're ready to extract money from it, you take it out penalty-free and tax-free. We take it out penalty-free and tax-free by way of a what? Loan. So here goes that loan again. So in the stocks, we take money out of the loan because we didn't redeem our shares. We didn't trigger a selling situation. We got our money what? Tax-free. Real estate, we never sold. We refi. We used to take funds out, bought another real estate. We took our money out what? Tax-free. Life insurance, we put money in the account. We got market rate of return. It grew tax deferred. When we're ready to take it out, we take it out what? Tax-free. See the consistency in these accounts? This is where the wealth lives. This is how you slowly utilize the proper accounts to position yourself to do what? Accumulate wealth over the years within these accounts and pay zero taxes on them. Zero taxes on them. And all of them, when you die, guess what? They receive what is called a step-up in basis. So you purchase your stocks today at $100 a share. 30 years down the road, it's $1 million. You die, guess what just happened? Your benefactors inherit that $1 million tax-free because it got a step-up in basis. This is why, again, you don't sell. You only trigger a tax position when you what? Sell. So if you can get into the assets, allow them to work for you, utilize them as you choose to, pay zero taxation, then you in there, you're beating the game. You're beating the game. Where do we find those at? Stocks ETF by way of margin in the accounts. Real estate by way of refi, using the equity, whether it's cash or reinvesting it, you still took the cash out. Make sense? And then finally, the life insurance, you pull out by way of a loan, you access that money tax-free. Make sense? Next slide, please. Endowment. You cannot outgive God. You cannot outgive God. What are you saying, Thompson? And as cliche as it may sound, the truth is, the more you give, the more you get, the more you will have to give. But giving comes from being able to accumulate assets to give. You can't give what you don't have. You with me? And so the idea of as you accumulate these wealth over the years, you position yourself that you can give them away. Give them away, because here's what happens when you give away. You know, someone I studied, and he said it so, you find more reward as a giver than the receiver when you're able to give. I'll say that again. There's greater reward given in the giver from the giver than the receiver. I can testify to that. You know. Secondly, giving to the right type of charity provides a child reduction on the contribution. What's the right charity? What's the right charity, y'all? Your church. So this becomes real critical and crucial now, talking about what? Accumulating wealth. How we accumulate wealth in giving? Because let's look at tax basis. Let's assume that you're based on a particular year. you find yourself owing the government. And anyone who's owing the government, when they file their return, I get almost indirectly say, you're not giving enough. Because if you're giving properly to the right charity, that becomes a tax deduction. Tax deduction, that charitable deduction reduces your taxes, you back to zero. So if you want a unique tax planning strategy for next year, you look at your taxes, how much you paid in taxes for the last year, look at how much you make this year, call your accountant up and say, okay, Doc, what are we looking like? And he or she should be able to give you a good estimate. Yeah, you're going to owe the government another $5,000, $10,000. You know what? I got it. Pastor, I'm cutting a check for another $5,000, $10,000. Okay? Now check this out. You could take that a step further. You could leverage that gifting. Okay? How do you leverage the gifting? How do you leverage the gifting? Going back to that prior topic, purchasing a life insurance policy. But in this instance, you're purchasing a policy whereby the church is the owner, the church is the benefactor, you're the premium payer. The fact that you're the premium payer, and the church is the owner and the benefactor is considered a complete gift, even though you're still alive. And through that complete gifts now position you to do what? Get the tax deduction. You with me? And so now when you do the math on that, that policy you purchase on you should be what? $3, $4, $5, $6, $700,000, as much as you can. Because what? You're leveling your tax basis in terms of that charitable deduction, but likewise, you're building and assuring that a check that church is going to receive is going to be of significance. And you know what you didn't do? You didn't disinherit your heirs from what was due to them based on the initial strategy. Does that make sense? Are you with me? Okay. That's how you leave a lasting impact on generations to come. That's how when you walk in the church and you see a hall says, Tony Lee Stubbs and Family Hall. Well, who's Tony Lee Stubbs and Family? Well, that's the family left $1 million to the church. When you look at a school and institution and you hear this family left this hundreds of millions of dollars, where do you think that money came from? It necessarily came out of their bank account to that institution. They're wise enough and realize that they can offset their tax bases while they're living, but they were able to take out a big policy and endow that to that institution, that school, that church, that university. You with me? That's the playing field they play on. And so I say and share, this is how we make a difference while we're living. Likewise, how you can leave a legacy when you die. Make sense? Let's go to the next slide. Okay? Endowment concepts. I hit on one of them, which is the self-insurance. With the self-insurance, we get that immediate deduction. Another concept in terms of creating and utilizing an endowment, I like to call a CD bond alternatives. You know, a lot of senior individuals, you look at their portfolio, there's a lot of CD and bonds that mix up. And for a lot of them, the intent is just pass it on. It's safety of money. Safety of money, that's all. They've accumulated it. The little interest they're earning on it, really, they don't care about that, but they want to make sure that if and when something happens, they got access to those funds. So CD alternative, okay, it's a play. Tax time bomb equalizer. I kind of hit on this earlier. You know, here again, husband and wife, they're looking at their portfolio and they're saying, hey, there's 101.5 million based on the other assets, the income they're generating or receiving at the time. They're content with that. The goal is what? The 1.5 to take care of the wife. If I were to pass, I want to show that happens. Or vice versa, right? But what they didn't factor in is a third of that is owed to the government. because that was coming from a what? A 401k, an IRA, a pension plan. So all of a sudden, he dies. And then a tax bill comes. And what she thought was 1.5 is now $1 million. That's a shock. That's a shock, right? And so here how we address those concepts to, one, maintain that the assets are sustained, but likewise strengthening the gifting. Let's go to the next slide for me, please. Case studies. Next slide. So case study number one, Patrice is 28 years, married, 2 children. She's doing well and hoping to expand. Her budget allows her to save. She's able to save $500 per month. She's concerned about loss of income due to debt or illness. Next slide. Next slide. So what we did in this case, she was able to set aside $500 per month. That index universal life. This is what it looked like live. $500 per month over the years. In the year 20, she accumulated, what's that number? 800,000. Okay, in the account. And that's 800,000. You turn around, you see that $75,000 a year. She can now receive $75,000 a year from the account, what? Tax-free. She's self-employed. This is her retirement plan. She didn't go to traditional IRA. 8% is 8%, so she can earn 8% in an IRA. She can earn 8% in this account. What she did, she put in this account. She addressed 2 goals. One, if she were to die, because of the life insurance policy, by default, there's a death benefit that goes to her heirs. From a cash accumulation perspective, she got real cash in the account that she can pull out as she chooses to. In this case, $75,000 a year, penalty-free, tax-free. Make sense? Go down 2 more slides. Let's go to another slide. One more. One more. Okay, this is utilizing the insurance from a mortgage business. Now, Mike's situation, he wants to pay off his mortgage early, wants to protect his family in case of loss of income or due to debt. Okay, so next slide. What Mike did was what? His mortgage, first of all, is $450,000. He put 20% down on a 30-year mortgage, so his monthly payment ended up being $2,058. Again, OPM, all he put down was what? Okay. After 20 years, Mike's balance is $194,000. Remember, his goal was what? Pay off his mortgage early. Next slide, please. So Mike was able to set aside $1,000 per month, ended up being $12,000 a year into what? An index universal life. From an investment perspective, with that plan, he was investing into the market, no market risk, no market downside. The initial debt benefit on this plan was $500,000, so Mike would have passed. The family received enough to pay off the mortgage to keep it moving. You fast forward to the next slide. Mike, at the year 20, I don't know if you can see that, he withdrew $195,000 off. Paid off that balance that he had. 5 more years, he started receiving an income of $24,000 a year, penalty-free, tax-free. Why? Because he put it in an account that he could control. The earnings in the account continued to grow. The debt benefit was there to sustain his family if and when if he were to pass. And then he made it on the back, and he retrieved the money out, paid off the mortgage. Now, in this case, Mike obviously wasn't my client, because the last thing I would be telling Mike is pay the mortgage off, right? No, we're going to take that money on what? Buy more real estate. This is how we accumulate real wealth. Okay, but in my case, that was his focus, but just wanted to demonstrate that, what that may look like. Thank you. 2 more here, and we're going to be wrapping it up. Now, this is the tax time bomb strategy. In this case, it's a 67-year-old male, female. Again, $800,000 invested in a qualified plan. And the math I used before, she's in a 28% federal tax bracket, 7% state, so 28 and 7 is 35 cents. When she died, 35% on 800,000, $280,000. She would lose $280,000 just because she died, and where those funds are positioned. Again, that's about 90% of folks out there who has any significant money in the retirement plan. That's where it's at, in those accounts. But what they're doing is what? They're building the tax time bomb. The scary thing is, the longer the money's in the account, what happens? The bigger that number gets. And the government loves that. And then the government said 74. It used to be 71. They just changed the tax law. You must start taking money out of it, called retirement minimum distribution. Okay. Yes. And by the way, it's based on age too. But they pushed it back. So which means what? Those next years, that number what? Continues to accumulate. The government's going to get its money now. And so you want to what? Be a step ahead. So if you were in other tax-free accounts, this is not your problem. But in her case, because she died, she would lose $280,000. What's the solution? Next, please. Again, understanding leverage. Use what you got to get to where you're trying to go. Instead of allowing that money to accumulate over the years, we tapped on her shoulder and say, ma'am, what if you took 5% of your money each year? These accountants are going to average earnings of about 5%. So you're really talking about taking the interest, okay? You took it 5%, which is $40,000 annually, and you purchased an $800,000 permanent life insurance policy with $24,000 in premium, which means she got $16,000 to do whatever she chooses to, okay? When she dies, or when death occurs, two things happens. One, she still pays the taxes on the qualified account, so that's your $520,000 debt from the pension. But she receives what? The $800,000 what? Tax-free. That's the other power of the life insurance piece, the death benefit being tax-free. So now if you look at this situation, instead of doing nothing and watching that money be reduced to $520,000, what did just happen? You increase it by 1.3 million. So if you increase it to 1.3 million, it becomes really easy to say you're going to cut part of that, 20%, a check to the church, $200,000, and don't sneeze. Why? Because you ended up in a position way better than you were before. You see what's happening here? Again, using what you've got to get to where you're trying to go, and this is how you're able to leave significant amount of money behind without necessarily costing you or disinheriting your heirs. You just use the opportunity that you have and allow it to work for you. This makes sense. So again, this is how we can leave what? Significant wealth to our heirs, and likewise where? Our charitable organization. This is true endowment here. The final case example is the 65-year-old male. This is the CDs scenario I mentioned earlier, $200,000 in CDs or bonds. Would like to provide $200,000 to family and $100,000 legacy gifting to the church. How does he does that? His only concern is what? Market loss, taxes, and nursing home expenses. Now this is something we didn't bring up earlier. Nursing home expenses. Why is this important? Once a man, twice a child. If we live long enough, we're going to visit that twice a child scenario. And in that twice a child scenario, they're caring for us again. Whether it's our spouse, the kid, are we paying a professional to do that? Very few don't go down that pattern. You with me? The financial hit of that, however, is that what? It eats up a lot of resources one builds up. And that's a critical point. So if you got a husband and wife, going back to the 1.5 million, and one of them took ill before they died, and they ate up, think for this for a second. Typically one need nursing home care. You're talking about 24-hour care. And I know in the African-American community, we get the team up and say, okay, we'll take care of mom or daddy. And we learn real quick. It ain't easy and it don't last, because that team become an I. That become one. And not one, if he or she married, then they find themselves in a problem. Because why? They're trying to spend too much time taking care of mom, but they're forgetting their family behind. It just becomes a ripple effect. Well, I'm not going to get into all that tonight. But the point is, it eats up your financial resources, okay? And so being able to utilize a leverage strategy to address that, because guess what? And all the opportunities I've talked about with the life insurance, you know what it has on it? It has this thing called chronic illness rider, which simply is a trigger, a nursing home trigger. The same triggers that if you had an individual nursing home policy, triggers you to access the debt benefit while you're living for that exact expense. I'll say that again. It has a nursing home rider that the same triggers that would trigger one needing nursing home care will allow you to access the debt benefit while you're living to address that expense. Now let's kind of break that expense down. 24 hours a day, even if it was $10 an hour, we could agree it's more than $10 an hour, right? So $10 an hour a day is what, $240 a day. 10 days, that's $2,400. 30 days a week, what were we at, 7,200? So we're knocking out $100,000 a year. So again, looking at an account that has $1 million, you say that you're good. The average person, they're going to need nursing home care is typically somewhere between 3 and 5 years. So at $500,000 at $1 million, and you deduct $500,000 for care, you're down to $1 million, right? But guess what? Where are you getting that money from? A taxable account, so now you got to factor the taxes on that. So this is how one could easily be left, started out being financially strong, and because hubby got sick, wife got sick, find themselves the survivor in a real difficult place. This is the solution to that. The right life insurance, now it serves for multiple purposes. Remember I told you I love that plan. These one of the other features that it's like almost the perfect investment vehicle. Again, it's life insurance. So in our community, we think of what? Someone dying. But no, this is an investment vehicle in multiple places, and I've identified them. So coming back to the strategy, what happened? 200,000 from the CDs. We took the 200,000. Next slide for me, please. And we placed it in a permanent life vehicle. Just the 200,000. That's the only thing we did. Just move it from Plan A, putting in the life insurance policy. That debt benefit was now $685,000. He didn't put another penny in the account. What's happening? The cash account over here is accumulating each year as well as the debt benefit. So if he or she needed cash, they can do what? Go in there and extract it. But rather than just leaving it in the bank and the bonds, they leverage it now. And so what happens? They got $600,000+ in debt benefit. So if they took ill prior to their demise, they're going to nursing home expense that they can withdraw from to address that concern. You with me? Or if they withdraw from their other asset, he has a tax-free way of what? Replacing it. Make sense? Finally, if they die of normal cause, this is a way to what? He can easily what? Leave $100,000 back to church in the form of an endowment. Remember, that was one of his goals, correct? Maintain the $200,000 and leave the church $100,000 in gift. And in this case, the debt benefits from day one becomes $685,000. If he died a week later, the church got $100,000. His estate still got what? $585,000. You see where we're going with this? Again, how much more did it cost them to leave a $100,000 gift to the church in this scenario or the previous scenarios? Zero. Zero is just utilizing what you have to get to where you're trying to go. These are what? Wealth-building concepts. Make sense? Okay. Finally, celebrating the fruits of your labor. If you implement these strategies, given your time in terms of whether you're in that 30-year cycle, a 20-year cycle, or the 15-year cycle, you're going to get on the back end, and you're going to be able to truly enjoy, some of life finance. We should be enjoying it, along the path, but you get on the back end and, it's the cruise after cruise. It's a trip after. I was talking to one of my clients. Wow, we just came off a cruise. I getting ready to go on another cruise. Why? Because why? We position them to be able to do that. And it's not they started out being wealthy. No, they started out being intentional about being wealthy. And that's the difference. Understanding what you have and what to utilize, again, to help you get to where you need to go over time. Make sense? So thoughts and actions equal wealth accumulation. Okay, so we're able to do that. When legacy leaves, a wealth financial plan assures that what? Life abundancy and prosperity. If you implement a plan and you work it, it will work if you work it. It will work if you work it. It will work if you work it. Okay? Don't let life take you by surprise. Obviously, we know surprise happens. So we want to be able to what? Address those opportunities. Position the assets where they should be positioned. Invest in the right accounts. Invest in the right accounts. Wash, rinse, and repeat. Wash, rinse, and repeat all day long. One house a year in 30 years is what? 30 houses. I know it sounds simple, but it's attainable. Stop being poor. What's that? Passing over opportunities repetitively. It's not rocket science, but in anything, we got to shift our mindset, shift our dream. Someone said dreams are a recycle of past information. So if you came from a place where all you saw was some bad stuff, that's what you dream about. And you think it's okay. But shift your mind, you shift your heart, and start to think differently and do differently. You prove to yourself and others that, you know what? Now, you're getting it from an island boy here. So I'm telling you, it ain't like you getting it from someone who don't understand it. I promise you, I've lived on both sides of the tracks, and I love this one here all day, every day. So I'll just leave that there. Go and live. You implement a plan, you work it, just go and live. That said, I thank you, men and ladies, for your time and the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Open up the doors for questions. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I really appreciate the four stool, as I understand it, path to wealth.
Yes, sir.
Outlined tonight. Very insightful. Appreciate being here. But I asked you if you would comment on a scenario of a 25-year-old
Mm-hmm.
graduating from college, six-figure debt. Where does one start
Mm-hmm.
in the wealth accumulation path that you outlined? Where would he or she start?
Okay.
It takes money to buy a house.
Exactly.
It takes money to invest in ETCs.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. ETFs.
Yes.
It takes money to buy and invest in real estate.
Yes, sir.
It takes a lot of money
Mm-hmm.
to invest in real estate, then try to pay the mortgage and reinvest or borrow from the property that you've invested in.
Yes, sir.
But I'd like a brief comment on what that 25-year-old, but that is the outline that you went over.
Very-
Where does he or she start?
Well, the beauty of this is that he or she is 25 years old. So if he or she is exposed to these principles early, that means he or she has at least 40 to 50 years of grinding and accumulation period. Okay, so that's the plus. What I would also say or add to that then, as he or she being intentional about addressing everything they're doing, to be intentional about cutting some funds, setting some funds aside. So if it's whatever the income is, be intentional with whether it's 5% of it, 10% of it, and again, it's over time. If you investing $500 per month, okay, 5 years, that's what? $30,000. $30,000 is more than enough to put on a down payment to purchase his or her first house. Now, that's one play. Again, the other part of it is what? Everything else becomes what? OPM, other people's money. You just need to get in. Again, that's why I used the example. The same money that he or she is going to be paying rent, assuming they're out on their own, is the indication that he or she could what? Purchase a home. Because $1,500 is $1,500. Whether it's going to the rent or it's going to a mortgage. $2,500 is $2,500, whether it's going to the rent or going to the mortgage. So they're demonstrating that they've got the means to purchase a house, and now if they're showing the means to purchase a house, they just need what? The down payment. Remember, the three things: job stability. So they're coming out of college after a couple of years, they can demonstrate the stability. And in a couple of years, you do the math, setting a few bucks aside per month. And in 2 years, he or she should be able to go purchasing that first house. Just being real intentional about that. And then, again, they got 40 years after that to really go wild with it. You're welcome. Yes, sir?
You spoke about investing, taking money out and investing into duplex, triplex, quadruplexes. In that sense, what would be, let's say you want to move to a different place. Say we're moving out of Miami into, say, Georgia with cheaper properties.
Yes.
And you want to build there.
Yes.
Something. What would be a plan for you to probably use maybe something that you already have to invest into something like that?
It goes back to the same borrow, buy, borrow, and the buy, borrow principle. You're moving out of something. So that something, what, has a value to it. So you can do one or two things. You can sell it or keep it. I'm from the school of keeping it. Because yes, let's use numbers now. Assume that's value $500, you still owe $200. So if you were to sell it, you got a $300,000 gain. You didn't do anything else. You got to pay capital gains taxes on that. But the fact that you're going to be moving to Georgia, you're going to satisfy the capital gains treatment, and you won't pay any taxes. You can build anew, but you only ate one time in that transaction, which is to sell the house and you purchase another. The difference is that's what you eat. You ate. If you refi, extract the amount you need to purchase the home in Georgia, still put some in your pocket, and you still left the house in Miami. You own that. So in 5 years, 10 years, what happened to the appreciation? That was worth $500 this year. In 10 years, that may be worth $650. 15 years, that may be worth $800. So you come back and do what? Eat again. You with me? And or you can use some of those funds to buy more properties, especially going to a city or a state that what? Has a lower basis in terms of valuation. So you could be that individual that goes into Georgia and all of a sudden you purchase 3 homes. you know, but in 18 months period, and they said, man, that guy got it going on. And all you did, interesting enough, from California and New York, they're doing it in North Carolina all day, every day. That's what they're doing. Taking the assets they have because they're coming from a very high district, moving into something a much lower district, and then they buying up 2 times what they had previously. And you know, it's like a game. So again, but the same principle apply. You didn't sell. That sell word is a dangerous word. And in every illustration that I showed you, there was not an opportunity. The stocks wasn't sold, the ETF wasn't stolen, and the life insurance wasn't stolen, nor the real estate was sold. Everything was what? Borrow. OPM. Either utilizing your money or other people's money in that process to do the next.
Two things. When you refinance,
Yes, sir.
you have to then start over. Like
Mhm.
if you've got a number of years
Mhm.
that you're paying, it almost makes it very challenging to actually pay off a property if every time you refinance, you start over.
Mhm.
And so that I won't come back, how feasible is it to have lines of credit from your mortgage also? So those are 2 different things. But
Yes, sir.
address the fact, it's one of the things always reluctant to refinance when I've gotten 10 years down, you know, and then you refinance. Yes, the money is there, the equity is there, but you actually start over from the beginning with another 30 years or whatever your mortgage. So tell me about that.
Dr. Jackson, the longer period they allow you to start over, the better. See, we get caught up on going back to they want to pay off. Over time, in your asset appreciating, you'll accumulate enough assets to start paying off if you choose to. Here's what happens to assets when they're paid off. A couple of things. You value your house, you appreciate your house, you appreciate your property, you and the wife. Your kids may or may not. You with me? Right. And if you got more than one, then you're going to have a problem. Because here's how this look. Okay, this house is worth $1 million, it's paid off. Okay, there's 3 kids. One of the kids is saying, look, that's mom and daddy house. I'm not going to sell that house. The other 2's like, Negro, I needs that money. So now you created a problem. Remember, it's their inheritance now. So what just happened? You created a situation whereby those kids are no longer siblings anymore because they're fighting now. The 2 not speaking to the 1. And we can go down the list of what that does, okay? Because the emotional ties to that house, okay? When there's a debt, it becomes easy to move along because no one wants to assume the debt on the back end. Mom and daddy house is worth $1 million. How much is old? 600,000? Yeah, we will sell that. It becomes easy. It becomes an easy conversation. We don't sell. Who's going to pay it? I got my own mortgage here. It's not attractive anymore. You with me?
You're saying do it, but you're saying refinance.
Yes, yeah. I'm saying refinance with the understanding that you're still accumulating.
Yeah.
Okay, refinance. So now here's the difference. When mom and daddy died, and mom and daddy has 4 or 5 properties and say, this one receives 2, this one receives 2, this one receives 2, that's a different conversation. And they ain't know what we going to do. It's cut up in the will as to what goes well. See what just happened from a wealth perspective? One house created 6. And then that generation now, that family, each family has at least 3 houses, including their own. You with me? That's the difference. For a lot of us, we get so tied into that one house, and to your point, all this money, but that money's sleeping. It's not doing nothing. You know? And if it's paid off, if you owe a little bit and the government come knocking, you can't pay, they take it. You know, so if you refinance, you got $400,000 or $500,000 in an account, it's hard for anybody to come and take it because you got resources to address the concern that may need to be addressed. But if it's paid off or still has a balance, it could be paid off, and taxes alone could still cost you to lose it if you don't have the means to maintain it.
Awesome. What about line of credit?
Line of credit is just as good. The point is you're borrowing. And with that borrow becomes the deduction. But more importantly, with that borrow, you're not triggering any taxation. And it's with that borrow, again, the borrow is to what? Buy another. And another, so the difference becomes, you know what, baby, you know that beach house you were talking about? We're going to get it. You know? And yes, what becomes the great equalizer? Coming back to what? I said it earlier. What is the great equalizer? Life insurance. Because here's why it becomes the great equalizer. If you've got a big enough policy to address all the debt you have, you're still left from debt free. You with me? If you got $20 million in debt and you got a $5 million policy, they have the choice to choose now whether they want to eliminate those debts or take that $5 million and run. You with me? Versus you leaving them. Interesting, I did a workshop in Tampa some years ago, and at the end, this guy came and shared the story with me. He and his best friend, over the years, his best friend actually turned him on, was acquiring real estate. He said, Thompson, we need to talk. I said, yes, sir. He said, man, I don't want what happened to my best friend happen to me. I said, what happened? He said, you know, we accumulate these properties over the years. And when he died, the kids neglected the properties. They sold them for little or nothing. Because why? They didn't understand. They didn't appreciate real estate. Okay? And it just hurt me to see what transpired with those properties that I know he built, right? I said, it's a simple solution. We're going to do two things. For you, just establish a family trust. You deed all your properties to your trust. But in your trust, you can dictate the terms of how those properties should be utilized, whether sold, or more importantly, the trust itself would take care of all the tax concern, and then any difference, the funds could go to the heirs. That's what you're going to do to the left. But we're not going to disinherit them. So what we're going to do is take out a big enough policy so that if and when you die, they receive a form of inheritance. Because at the end of the day, what his partner did was that he was just focused. He was so oversaturated in real estate that the kids didn't care about real estate. They wanted what? Cash. Right. And so they were just trying to liquidate for cash. But if you position them whereby the real estate can still work and they receive the cash, then, you know, it can be maintained and sustained much, much greater until they grow to appreciate real estate. Because if you're not in it, you're not going to appreciate it. He didn't build it as hard to appreciate it. That's just my thoughts on that. Any other question?
How important is your credit when it comes to those type things? And should you wait until your credit improves before you try to refinance?
I say you explore, the sooner the better. Credit is relative. Who's it relative to? The financial institution that's granting you the funds. And my point is, Bank A, interesting enough, banks don't play on the same playing field. If you believe that, you've told yourself something wrong. You go to Bank A is going to tell you they want A, B, and C. You go to Bank B, they're going to tell you they want A, B, and C, and maybe D. You go to Bank C, they just want to see A. And this is for the same thing. And so the point is, you shop around, you knock on enough doors, and until you identify the one that's going to work with you. Then you get some substandard. But if by chance the numbers make sense, because what it comes down to is the term and the cost. Okay, so if a substandard said, wait, they're going to hit you with 10% interest rate, which is obviously aggressively high, you know, but you can refi. So, you know, 10% on a number and 7% on a number, the difference is 3 points. Now, over 30 years, there's going to be a significant difference. Over 12 months or 24 months is really not that big of a deal. That's just the price you pay. But check this out. The point is, you get it in a higher rate in 24 months, you refi, because in 24 months, your credit would have been better. You just bought a house. You paid all the payments on time. You're real intentional about that at this stage. You with me? And then you go refi that note to one of the better terms. But guess what? You've had the house for 2 years. What happens to that house value? It appreciated. So more than likely, you've made more than you've lost in the higher interest rate. There's a strong chance you've made more than what you've lost paying the higher rate. You know, I had our clients the last 2, 3 years. Mark, we're waiting for the interest rate to go down before we purchase it. No, you go ahead and buy that property now. Well, Mark, the interest rate is high. It's temporary. But guess what? Everybody's on the sideline waiting for the interest rate to drop. You go buy when everybody is waiting. She's trying to sell the house. You take the higher rate today, and 3 years from now, what? You've had that house for 3 years. Interest rates are still high. That's what, 3 years ago. Folks are still waiting. So what happens when interest rates finally get down? Everybody now is trying to chase that same house. And what's going to happen? You're in a bidding war. All of a sudden, you done bid yourself out. You still got to wait again. You know, versus you buying because there's only a few of you out there. You can negotiate the terms because he wants to sell. Even though the rates are high, he understands the rates are high, so he's glad the fact that he has buyers knocking, and you can negotiate better terms. And again, those rates are what? Temporary rates. Yes, ma'am?
That's just good information.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
How do we get in contact with you? How do people that want to hear more of what you have to say, how to speak to the audience and let us know how to do that?
Okay, well, I welcome the opportunity to speak to anyone, regardless of where you are in the financial planning process. Like, this is what I do. You can reach out to me directly at 919-274-1597. Again, that's 919-274-1597. Again, I'm Mark Thompson. And or by chance, you can reach out to Dr. Jackson. He knows how to reach me. And he's feel free to forward my contact info. And I welcome the opportunity to work with you all. Dr. Jackson, I appreciate you and I appreciate the time. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, that was a lot of information. Was that powerful? Amen. And we thank Bud Thompson for the investment that he made into us on tonight. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and thank you all for logging on tonight. Tomorrow night, we'll be back, same bat time, same bat station. We're going to be here with Mr. Carlisle Webb Sr. will be our presenter on tomorrow night, and we look forward to another night of information. But I really was blessed on tonight, man. You did exceeded expectations, man. It was wonderful, and I pray that the online audience, the virtual audience, were blessed as well. You have his contact information, or as he said, you can contact me, and I'll be happy to point you into that direction. But I personally was helped by his presentation on tonight. God bless you, everybody. Thank our media ministry, our media team for making it happen with us on tonight. There are some refreshments that Mr. Thompson, amen, provided for us on tonight as well. Y'all at home cannot get that, amen. Now unto him that is able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, according to the power that worketh in us. Unto him be glory in the church by Christ Jesus throughout all ages, world without end. God bless you. Good night, everybody.